Hello to everyone tuning in. I'm Vanessa Richardson, the Events Project Manager of the International Wrongful Conviction Day Committee. And today I have Harold Levy joining me for an interview in recognition of Wrongful Conviction Day. So Harold is a lawyer who worked in Ontario criminal courts. Later, he worked as an investigative reporter for the Toronto Star, retiring in 2006. And he's now a freelance writer with a blog about cases concerning injustice, especially those involving former pathologist Charles Smith. And he lives in Toronto. So thanks for joining us for this interview today, Harold.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, okay. So let's just dive right into it. I firstly wanted to ask you, when did you become interested in the issue of injustice and wrongful convictions?
Vanessa, when I was a teenager, my father was always exposing me to books on miscarriages of justice and the lawyers and the individuals who fought so hard to remedy them. For example, he exposed me to books such as Émile Zola's J'accuse on the Alfred Dreyfus case, and books about Clarence Darrow, famous lawyer on the famous Scopes trial, and his fight, his battles in defense of the wrongly accused. So by the time I got to university, I had determined to spend my life in some way assisting those who were wrongly accused and convicted, and as well as reforming the criminal justice system in some way so that these injustices would not keep happening and happening.
So what would you say is the most important to know about wrongful convictions?
I can put it in a nutshell. Vanessa, it's a quote that I have from Jennifer Givens, and she's director of the University of Virginia Innocence Project. And she said, "It is incredibly easy to convict an innocent person, but it's exceedingly difficult to undo such a devastating injustice." And I think that's why we have to fight so hard to get it right from the outset. It's so hard to turn around to unscramble the egg. And I think that's why Innocence Canada is so important.
Mm-hmm. And when you worked for the Toronto Star, you wrote an expose on the William Mullins Johnson case. So what inspired you to do that?
Well, let me tell you a bit about the case. In a nutshell, my proverbial nutshell, although I'm allergic to peanuts, but that's not relevant really. Bill Mullins Johnson spent 12 years in prison, horrible years, after Smith's reports helped convict him of sodomizing and strangling his 4-year-old niece, Valen. That was back in 1993. That was in Sault Ste. Marie. So experts who later reviewed the case, and I'll give some details soon, they found that Valen had died from natural causes and found that Smith had lost very important evidence that might have proved as such and as much. Bill Mullins Johnson was ultimately released in 2005, and he was later cleared of all the charges. And here's the good news, he was awarded $4.25 million in 2010.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my involvement with the case, and I will get to inspiration, it started with a phone call from David Bayless, and he's a Toronto lawyer. He was handling the case for ADWIC. He explained that Charles Smith, who had been provided with microscopic slides and the other forensic materials which had been taken from Valen's body, and that, see, the inquest had been conducted by the local coroner and then sent to the hospital for sick kids where Smith was. Well, Smith couldn't find them, he said. He failed to produce them. David Bayless had been trying to get them for 2 years. And here's the heart of it. Without them, he would never, ever be able to prove that Bill was innocent. So he says, could I help? Well, I said, of course, I'll try. I knew from another Smith case that Smith had hid hugely important forensic materials in a drawer in his desk at the hospital for sick kids. My personal theory, which I've kept to myself over all these years, it's just a theory, was that Smith kept certain souvenirs, we'll call them, in that drawer, as if it was a museum. So it's an ugly theory. So I called up the newly appointed chief coroner of Ontario, Dr. McClellan. I told him I was working on the story of the lost exhibits from the inquest for the next day. And then I told him exactly where he would find the exhibits. Sure enough, That's where they were found. Dr. McClellan sent them for separate analysis by two widely respected authorities. And lo and behold, both of them, after applying the latest up-to-date technological developments, they separately concluded that Valen had never been sexually abused and that Valen had died a tragic but natural death. I have a letter from AIDWC thanking me for reporting on the Mullins-Johnson case. And that letter says, quote, "Your relentless pursuit has been instrumental in achieving his freedom." I think that's what sums it up. It explains what inspired me, and I think it's the relentless pursuit of freedom for an innocent man. And I think that's what should inspire all of us. And I think that's the raison d'etre for Innocence Canada as well, of course.
So, as I know, you actually sat on the board of AIDWC, the Association in Defense of the Wrongfully Convicted, which is now Innocence Canada. So could you tell us about what you learned from sitting on that board and what your experience was like?
I was on the board in the early years of the organization, Vanessa, for a short time. I had to get off it because I had moved into the newsroom at the Toronto Star and was reporting on AIDWC, which I admired so greatly, and there would have been a huge, humongous conflict of interest. But while I was on the board, the biggest lesson that I learned is that no matter what AIDWC could do, this was just the tip of the iceberg. There were so many cases out there festering from injustice and from the frailties of our criminal justice system in Canada and in other jurisdictions. And these numbers were bound to grow and grow and grow far into the future. It was unlike any other board, and I've been on lots of boards, but unlike any other board I'd ever been on, AIDWC played a huge, invaluable role, as it does now, in the administration of justice. And I just had the feeling that being on the board, it was more than sitting down and around a table with a bunch of very nice people talking about nice things. It was a huge responsibility, and that's what AIDWC has undertaken.
And I know that you now run a blog covering the cases that Charles Smith worked on. Could you tell us some more about that?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Vanessa. I love talking about the Charles Smith blog. I actually named it the Charles Smith blog. I didn't ask him, mind you, but in effect, I'm just talking about him somewhat. I'm going to read to you the profile that I run with the blog, because that, in my proverbial nutshell, tells it all. I created the Charles Smith blog in 2007 after I retired from the Toronto Star to permit me to keep digging into the story of the flawed pathologist and the harm he had done to so many innocent parents and caregivers and to our criminal justice system. Since then, the blog has taken new directions, lots of them, and that includes examinations of other flawed pathologists. There are other Charles Smiths out there. Flawed pathology, flawed science, flawed technology, which has marred the quality of justice in courtrooms around the world. So the heart of the blog is my approach to following cases that raise issues in all of these areas, especially those involving the death penalty. So check out the blog, check it out at smithforensic.blogspot.com. I actually started the blog when I retired from the Star as a means to get accredited to the Gouge inquiry. And that was a public inquiry that had been constituted largely because of my reporting, which makes me feel really good. That worked, I got accredited, and then never looked back. The last time I checked, I had almost 2,700,000 page visits.
Wow.
So I didn't think I was being mistaken for a porn site. There were just too many.
That traffic.
All that traffic. So over the last month, I've had more than 18,000 page visits. So I've been trying to figure why there is so much interest. And this is from all over the world. And I have people in different parts of the world who keep feeding me with cases, with issues in their own jurisdictions, their own countries. But I think the reason there's so much interest and concern around the world about the enormous harm that can be caused to innocent people by flawed pathology and by flawed pathologists. And the other reason I do the blog is that You know, the cases are still running out. Innocence Canada has 3, if not 4, Charles Smith cases that are still in the mill. It's taken years. People are in jail and whatever, but they will not let go. They must be exonerated. And hopefully they'll be resolved soon. But meanwhile, the blog continues to grow, and I love doing it. I wake up in the morning thinking about it, and it's always on my mind, but it's one of my joys in life and keeps me alive.
Yeah, something you're passionate about. And I'm sure those of you who are listening today will also visit the blog and you'll get some more viewers.
I hope so. I used to think, I don't care if anybody watches. You know, I just got to write. I got to do this stuff. I got to express myself, maybe meet some friends, you know, throughout this process. So it's changed quite a bit since then. That no one out there is quite changed.
Okay, so lastly, why do you support Wrongful Conviction Day?
Well, I was connected with Wrongful Conviction Day from day one, from the very first Wrongful Conviction Day, and I have no one else to blame but my good friend and mentor. Her name is Win Rohr, and Win is this incredible person that deals with people with a heart and a brain, and at Innocence Canada, formerly at AIDWC. And Win put the idea to me and asked if I and other people could help her get it off the ground. And I loved the idea. It would pinpoint one day a year in which individuals and which organizations around the world could focus on this hugely important topic. And it would also could be used to draw attention to injustices, to wrongful convictions, and to their causes. Now, it was such a good idea. Let me tell you how good an idea it was, because the Innocence Project still claims in their promotional literature that they founded Wrongful Conviction Day. Well, not true. It was and still is Win Rohr of AIDWC, alias Innocence Canada. To that I say bravo, and let it last for centuries.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was all the questions that I had for you today. Thank you again for joining us, and we really appreciate the time that you're taking to write these blogs and, you know, bring attention to the injustice that is happening. And hopefully these cases will be resolved, the cases that are still in the works. Hopefully they will be resolved soon.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we really appreciate your work.
It's been my pleasure. It's very nice meeting you, Vanessa.
You too.
Thank you.